If my body could talk right now, it would probably say, you love this, so don't miss it while you're in it. I love the work that I'm doing with She Lives Intentionally. I love the writing, the research, the experiences that we're creating. I love creating something that feels this meaningful. And at the same time, there's the pressure of making sure it delivers for the women who are here now and for the women who will join later. And then there's the weight of thinking about scaling and forecasting and building the roadmap of all the things I've envisioned and of the things I haven't even created yet. It's really easy for me to get caught up in that future thinking, to keep pushing toward what's next. But I've had to remind myself that presence, at least in the way that we're talking about it, isn't just about slowing down. It's about paying close enough attention that you see the things and the people for what they are, and using that information to decide what you want and how you move forward. That's been eye-opening for me in all of this. Sometimes it's really encouraging, and sometimes it's hard to take in. Like when I notice people who follow my work, but they never engage with it. But even that is being present. It's noticing without letting it consume or deflate me. It's getting clear on who this is for and the kind of women, the vibration that I want around me. And in this episode, we're talking about what it really means to be present, not just to slow down, but to see clearly. Maybe to feel what we've been pushing aside, to notice what's been running in the background, and what it might take to come back to ourselves. My guest, Nyanna Quoi, is a licensed professional counselor and the owner of Cultural Counseling Colorado. Her work centers on helping people from marginalized communities confront oppression, repair after trauma, and explore identity as part of the healing process. She uses narrative therapy to support her clients. And she brings that same level of intentionality to her own life as a parent, a business owner, and a caregiver. We talk about what presence really looks like when the pressure is high and what it means to stay with discomfort when performing would be easier, and how coming home to your body, your voice, and your truth can change everything. I'm Marney Andes, and this is the She Lives Intentionally podcast. Nyanna, if your body could talk, what would it say about how present you've been lately?
That's a really good question to start with, because my immediate response is, oh no, I have to get into my body. So that's a really good question that's going to force me to be present in this moment. I think it would say, I need to slow down. It's interesting. I think I know this about myself, right? I figured this out, but somehow I still keep ignoring that message that my body keeps telling me, that it's like, yes, do a lot, go fast, create things, right? Work, be a mom, do all these things, but also don't forget to slow down. I think it's the also. It's the, can you do both?
I think there was a time in my life where moving forward didn't even feel like I was hustling, or that term, started playing out probably over the last decade of hustle, do the things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it even occurred to me that that's what I was doing at the time, but I always felt like I was in this forward motion, because any pause would be seen almost as that if I did actually slow down, it meant I was missing out on the opportunity to do something more. And I don't know if you've ever felt that in your life.
Yeah. Well, when you said missing out on the opportunity, that got me, because I know exactly why I don't slow down. And it is that it's the opportunity cost of slowing down. So I grew up in a household, first generation, also single mom, lots of other dynamics that impacted my childhood too. But I, for whatever reason, took away this message of you are starting behind and you need to catch up. And so I really, really took that in my bones and in my body. And I was like, let's go. I'm not going to let any opportunity pass me by. I'm going to hustle. And that doesn't always just mean like work more, although I think I did that too. But how can I be scrappy, right? How can I look for every opportunity and be intentional, not waste time, not waste money, not waste talent, and use all of these things to get ahead, which always, for whatever reason, felt to me wouldn't be getting ahead. It would just be like finally getting what felt fair in life, at least among my peers. And it's interesting because I've had this conversation with myself so many times. The skills that I developed living my life under that message give me superpowers. Living in survival mode makes you really strong. It makes you really creative. It makes you hardworking, and makes you connected to other people, right? Because you know that that's important to get ahead or to survive, right? And so I really struggle with letting those things go, and that's not really the stakes anymore. So how do I keep those superpowers and those skills that I've learned and earned, really, through those experiences, and also not instead of, but also slow down, transition in and out of it.
In a world that is, quite frankly, obsessed with like forward motion, what have you had to change or reconsider or unlearn in order to value the moment you're in?
I don't know that I have a good answer to that because I don't think I'm good at it yet. That's a very honest answer because I work with clients all day long in my profession, trying to cultivate that within them. But I think it actually is really unique to each person's journey. I mean, there's the cultural context of everything. But it's hard to do something that challenges the culture because you lose something then too.
Well, I appreciate that you said that. I mean, you and I, before we even pressed record, I was sharing with you that the new format for this podcast compared to the first one I started was I really want people to be in the moment. So we don't have our cameras on right now. We can't see each other. So for people who are listening to it, it's, you should be experiencing it in the same way you and I are experiencing each other right now, which is we're simply listening to one another. And I, having recorded a few sessions so far with this, was sharing with you of how incredibly powerful it has been for me to be so in the moment just because I took distractions away. I can't try to do a bunch of things all at once. Like my brain can't even do that. Not that it probably ever did that well, where it's like this whole concept of people think they can do more than one thing at once, which they really can't. But I've had that sort of physical, mental piece really rear its head in front of me now, where it's like I would try to do that when I was younger, but again, I don't know that I did it well anyway, but I definitely have noticed how I have to slow down. I'm probably a little bit more vocal about it. If somebody is to come into my office and I'm actually working on something and they ask me a question, I'm like, hang on a second, I have to finish this thing. I can't try to do both. Whereas like I would try to do both before. So are there things like that where you're like, oh, I have at least started to change the way in which I, even if it's for, like a work purpose or whatever, I have had to make that change in order to be more present.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bringing up distraction didn't even cross my mind when I was thinking about my answer for me. And I think that just really speaks to how, again, like what I was referring to, it's how unique it is for each person, what we can do to challenge these things. I find myself actually pretty hyper focused on whatever I'm focused on. So that aspect of being present isn't so much my challenge, although I also hear you, like we're still somehow expected to do all these things at the same time. And that just doesn't work for our brains or our bodies. Um, you can kind of fake it better than others sometimes, and that might work, but then that's inauthentic, which I just challenge no matter how that shows. But for me, as you were talking about the distraction, I started thinking about how different I am than that. And then I started thinking about, actually, I think what it is for me is trust. It's like a sense of control. If I can do, right, then I have more agency, quote unquote, in the world. But if I have to kind of sit still, then I have to trust that there's wisdom or experience or something that's going to come out of that moment. And I have to kind of really believe that, or else I'm not going to find it important.
That is good. And without you even trying, I want to go into this and we're going to talk a little bit more about your practice in general. But I wanted to share this, which is according to a 2018 article in Psychology Today, presence is often misunderstood as a state of peace, but it can increase anxiety in the short term. So when we stop numbing and start noticing, it's not always soothing. It can be deeply disorienting, especially for women who've been conditioned to push through or perform. You said something that was really interesting to me because it took me finally going into the research and also some of the work that we do with our Bloom workshop. I tell people that when you really get to a place of being present, it's really of awareness. So I tell people, you're going to be able to see maybe patterns, conditioning, choices that you've made. And the real power of that experience is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. For some people, they're like, oh my gosh, there has been all these great things that I haven't tapped into, and now I see it. But I've had other people that go through it, and you're like, oh, I know these things that I've continued to do out of patterns, and that's gut wrenching. And now I can't unsee it. How do you help people stay present with what they now know, especially when awareness brings discomfort or a sense of responsibility to change something in their lives?
It's a real invitation just for that short time to be present because it's implied safety, right? How can you be present with support and trust after I, establish that trust with a client, that wherever we go, we'll be okay, right? Clients don't know how they feel. And I'll broaden that. People don't know how they feel. When we ask each other how we're doing, we usually say good, or how was that? Weird? Was that hard? Those aren't feelings. And it takes a little bit more to say, I'm feeling embarrassed, or I'm feeling angry. That's a hard feeling to hold. Or I'm feeling gleeful. When was the last time you answered a question that way? But when we can be more precise with the language, that comes later, but the feelings that we have, then we can get into what's coming up and why do they exist? What do they need? What are the messages that they're carrying? What are you told about expressing these things? What do you believe about yourself? Right? What does it mean to be angry? Are you going to be judged for that? Right? So it's not often safe to explore what's going on for you. And I find that when I continue to ask these questions for clients, and really my friends and family, because I think that this is part of becoming actualized, and I want those people to have those relationships that help support their growth too, then I can know the nuances of the person sitting across from me. And so when somebody is coming into the room and feeling angry, I might have more of an understanding of what the message is underneath that, and then maybe what they might need. And when you're angry, it's really hard to actually kind of sift through that yourself, what that message is or what you might need. Right? When you're angry, you might be really bombarded with just like this energy that comes with that and wanting to do something. That's kind of how anger shows up as an energy. And I find myself saying to people, like, you're allowed to be angry if it's anger or whatever it is that comes up, because there's this idea that some emotions are negative and some are positive. And I have to explicitly remind people that that's not true, that it's actually just pointing you towards something. And if you can figure out what it's pointing you toward, you can live in a more aligned way, because that's all they're there for. You want to live in a way that is in line with your goals and is in line with your values, set you up for success. If you're angry towards something, for example, anger shows up when we feel a sense of injustice, when something is not fair, or to protect ourselves or others. Those are not negative things to hold. Now, anger gets a bad rep because sometimes that means we behave in ways that are aggressive, not for everybody, or we suppress it, right? And that can cause, physical distress too. But if we think about it in a way that is like, okay, well, what isn't being fair here? How can I make something more fair? How can I advocate? How can I make sure I'm safe? How can I make sure you're safe? I mean, that's what anger is really calling you to pay attention towards, and then to do something about it, because anger does come with that energy. So we can be present. We have all of that wisdom within us that we can tap into.
When you're really present, you might uncover some things that just don't feel great. You get uncomfortable. You think, oh my gosh, what is that? And what do I think about it? I want to dig into that though for a second. There's been times when I have felt anger, and I know that I was choosing not to really, really explore it for almost the conditioning that I was raised in, is that you didn't show that. You could get angry, but like you got to go figure out where to get angry, because you certainly wouldn't want to do it in front of people. You could go do it behind the scenes, but you almost didn't even want to talk about it. It was like, go get angry and get over it, and then you can come back into the conversation. If I wasn't sitting in a session with you, do you have advice on how does somebody even try to begin to process anger in their life?
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to it. It's the feeling, and then there's the behavior, right? So we think of anger as like yelling, but that's actually just a response to the anger. The anger itself is hard to hold, right? Because it's really powerful emotion. I mean, when you think of what the purpose is, which is to protect or make something just, we need power behind that. So actually, it would make sense that it's really powerful. It invites movement into something. So we need to do something with it. That's actually really beautiful. That's not negative at all. When we can't control that, right? When we can't regulate, then we sometimes scream and yell. Then we sometimes throw things or whatever it is, right? And that has consequences. So we tend to do the thing where we say, well, none of that. If I don't even want to risk the consequences or how that could impact things, so I don't even want to feel it at all. But what if when you come up angry, you really give yourself the opportunity to ask yourself, where is it coming from? What does it need? That's a question I ask clients a lot, and they're really caught off guard by that. But when you think about it, you can really just tap into that. I need that person to really understand that they hurt me and that wasn't fair what they said, right? And then you can actually just go do that thing. You can just say, I really just need you to understand that you hurt me. And then the anger starts to resolve because it's now been justified, right? There's been kind of a repair there. So then the anger can kind of move through. That's a kind of simple example. It's more complicated when we think about bigger things, right? I'm angry because of racism. Well, what are we going to do about that? Because we can advocate, for things to be more equitable. We can advocate for ourselves to be treated with respect, but we're probably going to still feel angry because that's not going to resolve in the world that we live in. Right. And so what are we going to do with that? And that's where we get into, well, what I tend to ask people, what do you want to do with that?
And I'm going to use this as a very specific example because I want you to know why I've been angry about it. So this idea of not funding Planned Parenthood, shutting down Planned Parenthood. And my guess is that the reason why some people are angry about it being open is because of the correlation with Planned Parenthood providing abortion services. I'm going to just take that off the table here for a second because that's actually not even why I'm angry. I was a patient of Planned Parenthood for almost 8 years. I was a patient when I was in college and needed support. And when my first husband and I moved out here to Colorado, I was still a patient with Planned Parenthood. One, because I got the care that I always needed. But when we moved out here to Denver, we moved with him taking a very entry-level job. I was going to be starting my master's program and did not have, that tuition covered. I was working multiple jobs myself. I would love for you to walk me through this. I am so angry that people are not seeing the full picture of what something like an organization like they are doing and only seeing whatever it is that they have a problem with. I'm just so angry that people don't understand. Had I not had access to that years ago, I don't know what would have happened to me. I get really upset by this. So I think I'm angry. I'm sad. There's a lot of things that are coming out of it. And my question to you is not only what your thoughts are on helping me process through it, and what can I do about that?
Yeah, I would probably just point out what stood out to me in what you shared. And the anger is connected to the misunderstanding that other people have about what Planned Parenthood provides people. And you have an increased understanding of what Planned Parenthood provides people through your own experiences. The misunderstanding is unjust, right? Kind of by definition. And so that would make sense that it's correlated to the anger here. You also mentioned being sad and maybe even frustrated and all these other emotions, which might be connected to a different part of it. But if it's about misunderstanding and you have this, we can call it wisdom in your experience and understanding of what kind of care they provide, my question to you would be, what are you doing to help mitigate that? What are you doing to share your experiences there, or why it's important, or what might be misunderstood, and identify ways in which you can help bring more understanding around their work? That might help you move through some anger, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's going to solve the whole problem. And in fact, I'd probably venture to guess it won't, right? But it might help you move through the anger. I can't solve everything, but I can try to feel less angry about it. And actually what that's doing is that energy that the anger brings, because energy or anger is vigorous, right? It's powerful. That can be channeled in that way, and then it can be left there.
I mean, I write and publish an article every week. I could write about it. I could share my experience. It does feel like, I wonder if there's a point when you just start to sense certain things. It was the first one that came up for me, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. My body senses I need to do something with it, or I'm going to implode. I think that's probably going to motivate me to write about my experience there, which there's some things to be able to talk through. I would love to be able to educate, but whether I publish it or not probably doesn't even matter. I mean, is that a safe assumption that whether I even publish it, just even potentially by writing about it, it might help me move through it?
Yeah, my question there would be, what's in the way of publishing it? And that's a genuine question, because there's often a lot of things in the way, right? There's the idea of safety, right? In the sense of what might it cost you to share that with people who don't know you that intimately? And then, privacy, right? That kind of leaves you vulnerable and exposed, which can be a great thing, but it can also be dangerous from an emotional standpoint. So you will have to assess that in the decision to publish, but the writing itself is helpful.
One of the questions I did want to ask you is around your work and using narrative therapy in your practice. And maybe we could explore this a little bit more. What's the connection between our stories and potentially learning to be more present in the way that we are living?
It's a great question. So narrative therapy really operates under the idea that problems occur in context, right? The mental health field follows lots of different types of models and beliefs about what causes distress or abnormal psychology, quote unquote, right? There's the medical model, there are wellness models, there are lots of different modalities for therapeutic practice and different types of way of going about things. Narrative therapy really says problems occur in context. We are not isolated from the world that we live in. And all of these messages tell us something about ourselves. And it really matters how we view ourselves in the world and how the world views us, because that shapes our experience too. And so while we might not be able to have agency in all of our circumstances, right? We're all limited in different ways to varying degrees. We can have agency in how we want to share our story and how we want to experience our stories. And so what I mean by that is, I think in the beginning of this podcast, I said, I grew up in a home with a single mom and also in first generation. That's very true. It's also true that I went to a private college and I grew up figure skating. And I could have shared either side of that story. And the work that I work with clients to support them in is, are we really, really holding on to these stories that limit us? Right. And that includes acknowledging the limitations and the costs and the context. Because if we ignore that and we pretend it doesn't happen, nothing works, in my belief, because it's just not genuine work. So how do I start building a story around these different experiences and different parts of my life that paint a picture that I want to make about myself? How do I have choice there, right? When I don't have choice about the kind of home that I grew up in, actually, but I have choice in how I want to see myself moving through these things. And so the reason that's actually really, really powerful is we start to then reinforce the narratives that we believe about ourselves, right? So I'll take a very kind of overt narrative about women. We'll just say, for the purpose of this example, that women are weak, right? If we believe that women are weak because there are all these cultural messages that tell us that about that part of our identity, being a woman, then we can start to really enforce that, right? We show up at school and we believe we're weak. And so we're like, well, I'm probably not going to go try to do that thing because I'm not strong enough to, right? But if we can start to tell our story in a way that actually we noticed how this morning I wasn't weak, then we can say, that was pretty much a corrective experience. That actually shifts that narrative that I believe about myself. And then that cultivates a sense of empowerment, right? And that's not to say that that cultural message doesn't exist. It goes to say that we're paying attention to the things that challenge it. And so narrative therapy, the way that I use it in practice, is really supportive of all types of people and all types of identity points. A lot of the work that I do with clients is identity development. And what I mean by that is all of these different messages, what they've told you about yourself. What are the ways in which you put yourself into boxes or labels? And actually, how can we be specific about not doing that and using the words that you use to describe yourself? How can we put all of these stories on the table, like different colors of a painting, and then make something of it?
Oh my gosh, that could be an episode on its own. Like, I'm just sitting here nodding, going, be like, okay, what are all these different narratives that I've told myself? Even your example of like which one you could have told at the very beginning. I was thinking the same thing of what does that mean for me? Where I've said, I grew up in a household that I felt like really, my parents never told me I couldn't do something. So I always felt like I could do anything that I wanted. But on the flip side of that, I also have this narrative that I grew up in a tiny little rural community in Western Nebraska where I didn't have exposure, like the idea of, oh, you could maybe go study overseas or you could do all these things, just because I didn't have exposure to that. So there's two narratives that are running almost simultaneously. I could do anything that I wanted, but I also had this narrative of like, I grew up in a way in which it was very limited as to what I had exposure to. And it's interesting. I never even thought about it until in this conversation with you of how much potential conflict that has in some ways created for me. How does one even make sense of that? Is that too big of a question to ask?
No, it's a great question to ask because I'm sure that's what a lot of people would be thinking listening to this, right? That's where all the work is, right? That's where therapy takes a long time, right? And just growth in general. Because as I'm hearing you talk about that, I want to know more about where those messages came from and how can we acknowledge those things and then give you some choice here. Do you like some of those? What's come out of one of some of those experiences? What parts of it do you like? What parts of it do you want to keep? And then what parts of it would be more impactful to move on from? And then how do we kind of integrate all of these things when we talk about your experiences and who you are?
I want to ask you this question and kind of bring it back to you. You're a therapist, you own your own business, you're a spouse. I know you're a parent. I also know you're a caregiver. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to being present? And where do you feel it the most in your life?
I think I struggle to be present in a personal capacity. I feel really privileged in the sense where my job requires me to be present. So I know that if I have 6 sessions a day for 55 minutes, I'm being paid to be present. I'm there so that I can really create that awareness and wisdom and invite that into the room. So I'm really good at doing it when it comes to other people, which I think makes sense when you talk about how I'm a parent and a spouse and a caregiver and a sister and a friend and a daughter, right? Being a therapist, it just kind of built on that. Um, I have a hard time being present mostly because I don't block the time to be present for me. I can successfully run my practice and block the time when it comes for other people. But when it comes to myself, it's hard to find some quiet. I mean, I have a small child, but honestly, that wasn't in the way. I had this problem before he existed. Um, I don't know what it is, if I'm being honest, because I obviously think it's important. We've been talking about why it's important. I see the change within people. I get to witness this growth for people when they cultivate the wisdom that comes with being present. I think if I had the magic wand question, which is in therapy, if you could, if this problem went away, what would happen? I think it would be the first thing I did every day. I think if it was the first thing that I could do every day, then that would set me up for success, the trajectory of every day. If I could take one moment to be present, there's so many things in the way of that, right? There's, raising small children. There's the immediate, okay, this is the only quiet time I'm going to have. So let me get some work done on the admin side. There's, oh, I have to get up and get ready and rush out the door and make a lunch for everybody and whatever else. I'm tired. I need rest. That's actually more fundamental and more important, right? So I actually have to prioritize that. And so therefore I had to make that choice there. So there's a lot of things that get in the way, but I think if we can, really put it at a high level of importance, right? Safety, and and rest, right? Nutrition, water, shelter, those things come at the highest priority. But if we can put the practice of being present high up there, yeah, I would probably pick that over, running to the coffee shop. I just don't always remember to.
If you want to give yourself a chance to think through these things, to work through these things, to decide, oh, now that I see it, how do I feel about it? What might I want to do about that? How does that influence me? I just am very much of a belief of if you don't take the time for yourself, those things aren't possible for you to even consider working through. And maybe that's the ultimate magic wand for everyone is just, are you willing to even commit to seeing that for yourself?
Yeah. Do you trust that it's important? I don't think that we trust that it's important. What happens is something brings us to our knees, and then we remember that it's important. And that's okay too. That's actually what surviving is. But then if we want to move beyond that, we have to implement that practice when we're not just surviving. And I say just in quotes because surviving is actually the whole point of the human experience. But we're trying to do so much more with it. So we have to do more then. We have to trust that it's important and that we'll be able to pull from this well of wisdom and of our experiences and that our body has and that our stories have in our minds and our feelings.
I would love to ask you the questions that I ask each guest. And the first question is, what does living intentionally look like in this season of your life?
This season of my life is really fun for me. My child is 2, so he's got a lot of opinions and he's got a lot of things he wants to do. My business is growing, my practice is growing, and in that I get to learn a lot. So there is a lot of do, right? And so to live intentionally, I was thinking about this. I know the answer. It was very clear when I asked myself that question. I need to be in my body more. So all that to say is I've bought into this. And to hold myself accountable to that, it's something that I've been saying for, in all transparency, about 6 months. I've been saying, I know what the answer is. I need to do this. And I haven't been. And I do think that that's, a privilege, like that I now have the time to spend more time being active and, doing yoga and going on walks, right? And kind of just moving every day. My job is very sedentary, right? I knew this 6 months before I was able to implement it, and that's okay.
What's one shift, big or small, that helped you or helps you to live true to yourself?
Yeah, this answer is really easy for me. It's my son. Having my son channels everything through the lens of what do I want him to see? What do I want him to experience as a well-adjusted human in the world? I really love being a mother. That's my story within that role. And so living true to myself means like, how do I want to do that? And that means starting a business. I started my practice when he was about to turn 1. And that means traveling with him. And that means sharing experiences with him and treating him like a whole human. And like, to me, that's living true to myself because I do believe there's a lot of ideas about what makes a good mother. And I just want to do it my way.
The last question. What's one thing you've learned about life that you would want every woman to know?
I would like everybody to remember, especially women, that you have choices. We do have limitations in the world, all of us, and they're different, and again, to varying degrees. But within those limitations, we have choice. We have choice in what we decide to do and what we decide we want to aim for. Right? Like an example of that is that I have realized that I don't actually want balance in my life. I don't want every day to feel similar, even if it's filled with different contexts. I want to be able to wake up every day and say, how much capacity do I have? What do I want to do with that? And you don't have agency in every day, right? Necessarily, but can I scale things up or scale things down over the next couple months? We have choices in these things. Now the cost is real to these choices, but we get to look at all these different options and live our lives the way that we want to live them.
Nyanna, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
If something here stirred something in you, don't let it sit. You can learn more at shelivesintentionally.com.